Hi, welcome to Relish Books. Today is part 2 of my Anne of Green Gables book versus movie video, and I'm talking about Anne of Avonlea, or as it's sometimes called, Anne of Avonlea. It's sometimes called just Anne of Green Gables Part 2, which I think is more appropriate for the movie because it really does not resemble Anne of Avonlea, the book, very much at all. But that is the book counterpart, sort of. Really, though, the movie Anne of Avonlea takes events from the next 3 Anne books. While Anne of Green Gables follows the Anne of Green Gables book pretty directly, when we move on to Anne of Avonlea, it takes a few events from Anne of Avonlea, Anne of the Island, and Anne of Windy Poplars. It kind of brings themes from all 3 of these books, snippets and stories and characters, blends them all together and makes up a whole new story for Anne, most of which doesn't actually happen in the books, at least not at all the way that it happens in the movie. So we start out in Anne of Avonlea, the movie. Movie pretty much starts with Anne's last day of teaching at the Avonlea school, while the book opens up a couple chapters in, and we have Anne's first day teaching at the Avonlea school. So essentially what the movie does is just completely skip the book, skip that year in Anne's life, because the Anne of Avonlea book is really just about her year teaching, her experiences teaching, this improvement society she has with her friends, her friendship with Gilbert before we get to the romance that happens in Anne of the Island. You know, Anne of Green Gables ends both movie and book with the reconciliation between Anne and Gilbert and the understanding that Anne is going to be taking the job of teaching the Avonlea school, which Gilbert gave up for her so she could stay home with Marilla. And so that's where book and movie both end, but then Anne of Avonlea the book and Anne of Avonlea the movie pick up very differently. So we move in, and then pretty quickly, in the Anne of Avonlea, Anne's home the whole book, and it's her experiences, teaching, etc. Marilla adopts twins. It's about the romance of this old woman friend that Anne makes. We have all these things going on, none of which happen in the movie other than a few little incidents that they took from Anne of Avonlea. And I kind of understand why they did that, because while the book is pleasant, it's fun, not a lot of pivotal things happen to what Anne's future is going to be. It doesn't really advance the romantic relationship between Anne and Gilbert. It doesn't really advance her career or her education. It's her year of being at home. So I enjoy the book, but I totally get why the movie skipped it. I do think it's probably, I'd have to reread them. It's a really fun book, but probably is one of the weaker Anne books as far as plots, I guess. So really the most of this plot is taken from Anne of the Island and Anne of Windy Poplars. The romance from Anne of the Island and Anne's teaching position in this town, the whole Pringle thing, and a lot of the characters like Miss Brooke, old Pringle family, all that stuff. A character who's not called Emmeline, but is kind of based on Emmeline. They kind of mishmashed Roy Gardner with the character of Emmeline's father to create Morgan Harris, who's Anne's romantic interest, while she's denying that she's in love with Gilbert. So they mixed together a lot of elements, mainly from these 2 books, to make the movie Anne of Avonlea. And really, it is a made-up plot, not a plot that comes from the book. And so to look at it that way, it could be hard to see how it can feel like a true Anne of Green Gables movie, but it does because it stays true to the characters. No matter how much they changed what happens, it's still, there's enough incidents and quotations lifted from the books, and the characters remain so true that it still feels like a true representation of the character of Anne. Her spirit, her bringing her optimism and ideals into every situation to make the world around her a better place type thing remains very true. The effect that she has on the people around her and, her stubbornness as regards to Gilbert, all these things kind of remain the same. Marilla stays the same, that rock solid character. Rachel Lynde stays the same, an amazing character. So the people back home stay true, and which I think is what really makes the movie special. It's a movie that's about, going out into the world, finding your way in a sense, and then finding that what you really need and really want is back at home. Where, you have the real heart of the movie is in the characters staying back at home. And that is what makes the movie really beautiful and something that makes it even better than the books, I'm going to say. In a way, it is very different. Again, they change so many things. I love the books. They're fun. They're entertaining. But the movie kind of takes these characters and brings out some themes that aren't quite as strongly put or prevalent in the books. I think it's really interesting that they completely skipped the whole plot line of Anne going to college, which happens in Anne of the Island, and went straight to Anne pursuing her teaching career. That kind of happens in Anne of Windy Poplars, which I really enjoy, the Anne of the Island book. Some of the romance is pretty silly stuff, but I think that's a really fun one. I love the dynamic of Anne and her roommates staying in this little house together and their good times. It's a very feel-good type book. But again, I don't blame the movie for jumping over that period. That kind of would have just been a totally different story. So yeah, they skip Anne going to college, and instead she plunges into her career. And she's very ambitious. She's chasing a career. She is denying her love of Gilbert. She wants, even if she doesn't put it in these words necessarily, she wants something better. She wants something beyond Avonlea, and she wants something more exciting and better than a childhood friend as her lover. And she goes out into the world, and instead of discovering all her ideals to be true and right, she kind of realizes that she's really wrong in the way that she's thinking about things. And ultimately, she chooses to come home. She chooses a home life and love and family over chasing a career, which I think is, a controversial and countercultural kind of theme nowadays. But it's so beautifully done and feels so true that watching it, I don't even know as these things would really, I don't know if you'd really even think about them in that way, because it's obviously true. What's right for her is clear to you as the viewer, even though she is denying it. And there are a lot of annoying things about the movie. I really don't care for Morgan Harris. I think he's kind of funny as a character. I do understand why they used him instead of Roy Gardner, the romantic interest from Anne of the Island, because he's so boring, which he's supposed to be. Roy Gardner's supposed to be boring to kind of show that Anne's ideal of a man is actually very boring in real life. So I get that, why they changed him, try to make him more interesting or whatever. So I'm fine with that. It's a little weird. He's a lot older. If you think about it, it doesn't seem this way, but if you think about it, his daughter is actually only a few years younger than Anne, which, I don't know, it's a little weird to think about, but it kind of works. And obviously she doesn't get with him. So there's that whole thing. I think Anne teaching at the school is fun. I love the characters of, what's her name? Lady Harrington and Pauline. Amazing characters, really taken from snippets of Anne of Windy Poplars and developed into some really great, strong characters who carry some of the most deep emotion of the movie, actually. So I love that whole side of it. I enjoy the town that she's teaching in, but again, changes from the book. So yeah, most of the changes I'm actually totally fine with. I do think the movie is actually superior in a lot of its themes and things that happen. A couple things that I don't like. I don't like Fred Wright. I think they made him kind of ridiculous. He's supposed to be just lovable. In the book, he's on Diana's level because Diana is she's a more innocent, simple-minded girl than they made her in the movie. I talked about that in my Anne of Green Gables video. And so, I don't know, his character isn't really developed at all. Like, I'm sure he's a fine guy, but he's just kind of a ridiculous figure in the movie, it gives this feeling of sadness to Diana's marriage a little bit, which I don't think should be there, because in the book, even though Anne kind of looked at it that way, he was a very good match for Diana. So, I don't know, there's a little bit of, I don't know, I wish he hadn't been quite like that, I guess. My other problem, and probably the biggest problem that I have with the movie, is that Gilbert actually got engaged to Christine. Because in the books, Christine is a friend of his and sees them together at a time when she and Gilbert aren't speaking because she had refused him when he proposed to her, and sees them together and is jealous. But in reality, Christine was engaged to somebody else all along. She and Gilbert were just friends. He was kind of hanging out with her as a favor to her brother, to kind of watch over her when she was at school. There was never anything between them. So it does serve a purpose in the book that Anne is jealous of her, not knowing the situation. But Gilbert was never interested. I mean, as much as he tried to forget Anne after she refused him, he was never interested in anyone but her. And I think it goes against his character that he would have gotten engaged to someone, no matter what Anne was doing. I know she genuinely did almost get engaged to someone else in the books and in the movie. So maybe they wanted to like make it an equality thing, but that feels untrue that he would do that. Gilbert, the whole character of Gilbert is that for whatever reason, I don't really even know why when you think about her treatment of him, for whatever reason, Gilbert has always been devoted to Anne and only Anne. So his engagement just feels wrong. I don't like it. In the movie, another big thing that they changed, which was purely for dramatic effect, and I guess you can't really blame them. They couldn't help having like a bedside scene. But in the book, when Gilbert is nearly dying, Anne has no relation to the family. She's refused Gilbert. They haven't spoken. She wants to go to him, but she knows that that's not her place, and she has no right to do so because she's an outsider to the family. You know, she's wishing that they were engaged so that she would have the right to go and be with him. But as somebody completely apart and outside from the family, she was not able to go and see him. And that's kind of a big deal in the book. And of course in the movie that's completely thrown over because they can't resist the drama of that scene. Which again, I understand, but it's kind of like, that's dumb. That wouldn't have been the way that it was, especially with him being engaged to somebody else at the time. So that's kind of, I'm so used to the movie being that way that sometimes I forget that that's how it is in the book. But yeah, that's kind of a big deal, big change. But overall, all things considered, I like the books a lot, but I love this movie. I love it more than the books, or the Anne of Avonlea book in particular, I guess, and Anne of the Island and Anne of Windy Poplars. Anne's foolishness is more humorous and fun in the movie than it is like exasperating in the books. She's just played to such perfection by Megan Follows that she's a more sympathetic character to me in the movies than in the books. In the books, I'm just getting frustrated with her. She's so blind, so prideful, which I know is part of her character. She has to change and mature. She's a good character, but Megan Follows just brings it to life in a really special way, and so I do prefer the movie. I prefer Gilbert in the books, except that he's not present as much. I talked about that in my Anne of Green Gables. They did need to kind of expand his character, change a little bit. They gave them even more of a love-hate relationship in the Anne of Avonlea movie than what exists in the book at the time of their friendship to kind of add humor and drama, but I don't really mind it because he does need more time. He does need more added to his character. So some of the changes, like the things with Christine, bother me, but yeah, he is still a good character. But Anne really leads it. Anne, Marilla, Rachel Lynde, and in this movie, Catherine Brooke, Mrs. Harrington, and Pauline are kind of the stars for me. And I completely forgive them the whole plot line with Morgan Harris and all that stuff for bringing in the characters of Mrs. Harrington and Pauline, because they are great. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Anne of Avonlea, book to movie, even though it's not an equivalent, it's really 3 books to 1 movie. I'm going to say the book is not better. The movie's better. So you can disagree with me, argue with that, totally understand, because it is very different. If you're all for movies being 100% true to the books, I understand they changed a lot of things, but I think it's a really great film, great messages, and beautifully done. So those are my thoughts. I am not going to do a third part because the third movie I've never watched. I know kind of what's in it, and they went completely off the deep end and did not stay at all true to the characters anymore. And it's just a complete piece of garbage that I don't want to see, and I'm not going to talk about. So that is the conclusion of my Anne of Green Gables book to movie review. Let me know what you think. Do you think the book is better? And I would love to talk to you about that. So thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.